Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Strong Women series. We are so happy to have Karlesha Hewitt with us today. Hey, Karlesha.
Hey.
She is an attorney, so she's got some brains in there. She's also a faith-based spoken word artist. So I'm actually super excited. I'll tell you why in a little bit. And Karlesha actually got recommended to us on the Strong Women of God page by Natasha. So I don't really know too much of you. We talked for a few minutes right before this, but I am so excited to hear your story and to just be able to connect.
Yes.
But first, how are you?
I'm hanging in there, man. This is definitely a different time for everyone. So still adjusting, but hanging in there. God is good.
Absolutely. It's funny because I'm like, in the beginning, people are like, yeah, this is good. Yeah, it's nice. It's vacation. It's time to stay home. And then like week 4, like, we're still in this. Okay. Week 7. Wow. This is a thing. So just, we are with you guys. We're praying for you guys. And glad that you're with us today and that you've joined us.
Yes, I'm excited.
So, hey, I'm going to just kind of get into this. Tell me a little bit about your name. Do you love it? Do you like it? Does it fit you?
So the way that I answer this question is it's a yes and a no. My name is Karlesha, right? It's an Isha name. So in my mind, I always thought my name was that ghetto name. And I'm like, Mom, why did you name me Karlesha? And she's like, it's not ghetto, but she'll be quick to like criticize somebody else's name. I'm like, but my name's ghetto too. But then one day I Googled it when I was like an early teenager, and it's actually the German of the name Karl, K-A-R-L, and it means womanly strength. Who knew? Right?
Wow.
And so once I knew the meaning of it, I was like, oh, all right, I am a strong woman. I want to be a strong woman of God, strong woman in every area. So to that extent, I love my name.
I love that. I did not know that either. That's so cool.
Right.
So, hey, again, I don't know anything about your story, so I'd love to hear about your journey with God. What has that been like for you?
So my journey with God, so I wasn't raised in the church at all. I like to say God kind of just showed up in my life, one season of my life when I was in college. And then I never paid much attention to him after then until the summer before law school. I had always wanted to be a lawyer since I was like 4 years old, first lawyer in my family. And I think for a long time, it was an idol for me, but I didn't know because I'm very like mission driven, goal oriented. And I always wanted to be a lawyer. But something had happened where I co-signed for someone and there was a repossession on my credit. And I literally couldn't get the loan that I needed to go to law school. So like I had gotten in, it was the summer before, but they wouldn't release the loan to me because, I had this repossession on my credit. Yeah. So my mom in the same summer, and this is like, I'm getting to know God, but I'm just really in a desperate place because I'm like, there's no plan B. What else do I do if I can't go to law school? So I was in a really low place. My mom lost her job that summer. It's so bizarre how God works. And she was able to get a package, and she took from that package, gave me $17,000 to pay off a car that wasn't mine, to settle the debt on my credit so that my law school would release my loans. And that's how I was able to go to law school. So that summer was the summer I really I called out to God. Yeah. I never pursued God the way I did that summer because, again, I was like, what am I supposed to do with myself right now? So that was the start. I mean, I've known him since. Really, those 3 years of law school were growing pains. I was saved my first year of law school in DC, interning. So the other thing is he took me all the way from Massachusetts, where I was going to law school, to an isolated new place where I'd never been before. I had to live there for 3 months alone. And I just got to know him. I went to a church. I had some mentors and was just really exposed to who God was. But it was a journey. I wasn't even anywhere yet, even back then, but I was getting to know him.
Wow.
So
yeah, good.
And the rest is history, so to speak.
Wow. I mean, I have a couple of thoughts. One is that I'm wondering when you were in those places because I'm realizing we have so much in common. I went to school in Boston, in Massachusetts also. And then now I live very close to DC. I'm about half an hour out from DC. So we got connections, but we'll talk about that later. But wow, so I guess my question is, you got saved that first year of law school. Did anyone tell you, like, how did you know to go to God? Like, why was that the place that you ran to?
So my mother was saved in her adult life. She's Jamaican, so culturally, they're bred for church in that country. But that doesn't mean you believe in it. That doesn't mean you're saved. That doesn't mean you have a relationship with God. So my mom knew God. She taught us to pray. We went to church up until about, maybe I was in the third grade when we stopped going to church. So I was about 8 years old. So I had been to church. I didn't really understand God, but I had a comic book picture Bible. And when we were bored, my mom would always say, if you're bored, go on, go read. So I would go and read that picture Bible when I was a kid. So to that end, I knew some of the very common biblical stories because I actually enjoyed reading that Bible. I liked to read when I was a kid. Yeah. So my mom was saved, I want to say, while I was still in college. So I watched her be saved, become involved in ministry, change. I mean, she changed before my eyes, you know what I mean? And I knew there was something to it because I saw it. But that wasn't my journey at the time. I was in college doing me, and what is meant by that. I was living in the world, doing worldly things, but committed to my vision for being an attorney. Like that was the one thing I was for, I was aiming at. Nothing could stop that. All of that God stuff, that was my mom. God bless her. You know what I mean? But I knew because I had seen it. That's really what it boils down to.
Wow. I love that. And it's such a testimony for your mom too. And I think, for so many of us who are sort of afraid sometimes to share our faith, or how do I go about sharing my faith? And sometimes it's not necessarily a conversation, although it certainly can be, but sometimes it's just people actually witnessing the change in your life. Like there's something different about that person, and that kind of sticks in somebody's mind. And then they're coming back and like, hey, what's different about you? So I love that you were able to see that from your mom, like that visible kind of presence, that visible change that God can do in people's lives. So if you were to choose like one word that really kind of summarizes your journey with God, what do you think that would be?
So I think for me, the word would be certain. Because I think, there's been more recently so many highs, so many lows. But he's literally always been that steady thing. Like even when I'm, like currently I say I'm in a wrestle with God, like literally today, I'm in a place with God. God and me are in a place because I'm actually mourning the loss of my mom. And we'll talk about that later, but she passed away in December. So I'm kind of going through something, I'm going through something, but I know God is here. I don't doubt his existence. I mean, he's certain, he's always been there. It's always been clear to me that he's orchestrating all of this, right? In hindsight, usually, right? When you look back. But literally, it's so clear to me and always has been since I was a baby believer, so to speak. When I was new to my walk, God is here. And once I knew he was there, I couldn't unknow it. So certain, that's the word.
Gosh, I love that. So many people looking outside who don't have the relationship kind of look at it as like, it's not a certain thing. It's a risk to believe, right? And for you to say certain, and also for your background, you're a lawyer, and that's a very like, it's by the book. Where's the evidence? Let me see the evidence. Let me know. So I love this. I love your story fully. So tell me a little bit about your mission. And I always say like God puts a purpose in all of us, and it's to love God and to love others. And that's where we start. But then he gives us these unique purposes and ways to carry it out. So tell me a little bit about how that's worked out in your life.
So I think that my mission has been since before I was saved, and I didn't know, right? Has always been to glorify God by way of exposing, the truth of God. And what I mean by that is to expose that you can have a relationship with him. You can do your best to obey his laws, right? And his expectations over your life. You can actually change certain behaviors, right? You can exhibit self-control. You can honor God with your life. I mean, it's possible. And I think the way that I do it, I guess most visibly is through poetry, right? Because I'm faith-based spoken word poet. So there's a lot of environments I'm invited into, I end up in that promote and glorify sin, right? Because art is very open to everything, not just faith. But because I'm a poet, I still enter into those scenes, those environments, and I can kind of speak into those people. And I say, my IG handle is K Speaks Life, and that's my biggest motive. It's like, I think my power, my superpower, I say, is my ability to speak. It always has been. It's just more honed now that I'm saved. It's like I interpret things. I understand God in a certain way that I can maybe say it to a certain person living a certain way that someone else can't, because I'm exposed to that lifestyle, right? Because that's where I was. And I think that is ultimately my mission always. It's like, okay, how am I glorifying God today? And it sounds so basic, like if I'm not doing it through poetry, like we talked about earlier, it's just life. How am I living? What decisions am I making? How am I talking to this person? How do I forgive this person? Like it shows itself in various ways, because that's what I'm meant to do,
Yeah, I love that. And so a couple questions. Like, I know that you've always been a communicator, but has poetry always been something, like, do you remember, like, were you a little girl writing poetry, and tell me a little bit about that.
So I have over 1,000 poems. The oldest poem I have saved and written, I was 10 years old. And I remember writing before that. I just don't know what I did with them. And I have books. I have books of poetry, just handwritten. I used to write multiple times a day, every day, processing. It literally got me through adolescence and, early adulthood. And it's strange. So now for the past 5 years only, I've been doing faith-based spoken word specifically, which is different from poetry. It's more rhythmic. There's a certain delivery. I memorize them. I never even would have thought myself capable of doing that, 10 years ago. But I actually can do it out of my head, because it's in my heart. It's my life that I'm, testifying about through poetry. But yeah, poetry has always been around, and it's a gift I inherited too. My mom was a writer. Her mom was a writer. Even if that just means journaling. They weren't necessarily poets, but they were very expressive women. And so, I inherited it by way of poetry. And my father likes to write music, so I got it from both sides.
Yeah. Wow. So this, I didn't prep you for this in advance, but since it's all in your head and you've got them memorized, is there anything you want to share? Like, share a little bit of your gift if you feel comfortable. Don't feel like you have to.
No, it's fine. My pieces are usually about 3 minutes long minimum. Is that okay? Are you ready for that?
We are here. We are ready, and we have open ears. Love to hear it.
All right. Geez, I'm trying to think which one to do now, because there's one, I'm going to be doing a series actually, where I present a piece, and I did the first one the first Saturday of this month, where I present a piece, and then I have people interviewing. I interview folks to unpack the substance of the piece. And so I just did it this past Saturday, and it was on the first Saturday of this month. And I interviewed 4 Christian men to discuss issues facing Christian men that Christian women struggle with. So I think I'm going to do that piece. Is that okay?
Yeah, we are here for all of it. So yeah.
So that piece is called A Letter, and I'm going to try to do it out of my head. I just wrote it 3 weeks ago. So, okay. There is so much power in man made in God's image, built to endure, sustain homes, lead women, love wives the way Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. Imagine the God who calls you to cleanse and sanctify, to present a wife holy without blemish. Your creator trusted you with all of that, but I observed a lack of connection between you and your fellow man, and this lack holds you back from godly purpose. And so I wrote this. A letter to moms, men, and the church. We need help. Dear mother of a Christian man-child, I will no longer help you raise your sons. The ones that compliment my smile but bring nothing to the table. The one God promised is well able but can't become because you enable them, the ones. The ones coming from fatherless homes. From women committed to raising them alone when God never meant for women to raise boys on their own. They won't become men. Now, Mom, I know you're qualified and full of strength until the end, but when your son is called to provide as a husband someday, your over-nurturing alone won't teach them. No, they need the discipleship of men, the mentorship of masculinity, a knowledge of the triune Trinity, and 1 Corinthians 11:3, the head of every man is Christ. Not your mother, not me. I alone can make you the man you were called to be, and brother in Christ, you've got to want that much more than me. So when you meet a wife, she can be a helpmeet and not a help raise. pray through trials with you, study the Bible with you, not to help save. An equal yoke, an iron sharpening one who sharpens back, a man not overcompensating servitude at church and ministry to make up for what he lacks as a man. And I know this is hard to hear. I'm sorry a woman wrote this, but I had to vent. Because we have empowerment events and other women's encouragements, but who is ministering to our men? Who's teaching pursuit, financial stability, provision and commitment to the family, or confidence without insecurity with a woman who's confident and valuing purity before marriage? This letter is not to disparage, but to draw attention to the dire need of the Christian male. Marriage is to represent Christ's love for the church, and the church failing to prepare its sons has failed. It's not good for man to be alone, and you can't multiply God's kingdom on your own. So men, ask for help when you need it, and help, please come, you are needed. Brothers, fathers, cousins, friends, God is calling men to be fishers of other men to end a drought in leadership, mentorship, marriage, and Christ-honoring men, because there is so much power in man made in God's image, built to endure, sustain homes, lead women, love wives the way Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. Imagine the God who calls you to cleanse and sanctify, to present a wife holy without blemish. Your creator trusted you with all of that, but I observed a lack, and that lack holds you back from godly purpose. And so I wrote this, a letter to moms, men, and the church. We need help. Sincerely, a woman of God. Thank you.
Wow. So good. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. That was so powerful. I feel like blessed. I don't even know if we were supposed to have that, but thank you for giving it to us. That's
Amen.
incredible. And God bless, your gift as well. I know that it's not easy. I didn't mention this, but I used to do spoken word also back in the day, back in college. I haven't written, I told you I stopped writing poetry a long time ago, but I used to. And I know it is not easy. And one of the things I always struggled with too was memory, like just remembering and stuff. So I would get up there and kind of just feel that pulsating inside and always get nervous. But so watching you do what you were born to do, what you have a gifting to do, was absolutely incredible, and how powerful and also needed, like the content of your message, so needed. So thank you for sharing that with us here. That's awesome.
Amen.
Do you have your videos on YouTube, or do you have a website or anything?
Just Instagram for now, at K Speaks Life. Like I said, I started the series. I don't know how much longer I'll do it. I'm just letting God kind of reveal, what's next, because that was a quarantine idea.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to keep it pushing for now. That'll be on IG Live so far once a month, the first Saturday of each month at 6 p.m. And eventually I'll have other platforms, some merchandising, but I actually need approval from my job before I do anything paid outside of work. So I'm waiting for that process to be approved, and you'll see me out.
Awesome. Well, we are definitely going to drop the links in there for you guys to be able to follow her Instagram page. I know I will be there checking you out, because that was great. So if you were to kind of look at your life up to this point, and you were to think about like a life lesson or even a common thread or a theme that you feel God has been trying to speak to you about, what would that be?
I think for me, it is, all you have to do is be exactly who God made you to be, and that is enough. And I think that's something that, before I knew a God, before I knew about being saved, what that meant, I think the thing that I was always struggling with was identity, purpose. Where do I find value, right? So that all of the sin and the bad things that I had found myself consumed with, it was really because I was trying to seek, okay, where do I fit in this? How can I be comfortable in this? So I'm trying to fit into something in somebody else's, in somebody else's uniform, so to speak, until I realized, going forward, getting to know myself, okay, this is who God says I am. This is who I think I am. Once you put those two things together, your whole life, like the whole journey now just becomes, how do I become the best version of who God intends for me to be anyway?
Yeah.
And I'm still on that journey, but I've come a ways, man. And so that's what I would say it is. Truly, truly, that's what it's been.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, hey, we are going to be wrapping up in just a bit, but I'm wondering, are there any books that you're reading, any podcasts, any shows you're watching, anything that you would like to say, hey, let me shout them out real quick. This is really good.
Sure, sure. So a book that I'm reading right now is actually The Legacy Journey, written by Dave Ramsey. I just finished paying off my consumer debt, so I drink the Kool-Aid. And anybody interested in wealth from a Christian and biblical perspective, that is a good book, because he cites a lot of biblical references to kind of show you what God thinks of financial planning rather than just his own conjecture. For podcasts, I've been listening to 30 Minutes with the Perrys. That is Jackie Perry and Preston Perry, two Christian faith-based spoken word artists turned authors, poets, speakers, world travelers, influencers. And they do a phenomenal 30-minute increment podcast, just touching on, like, you know, things that young Christians deal with, things that Christians deal with, just phenomenal subject matter, good, great content. You know, for growth. And Preston Perry is an apologist, so he also brings a very different, unique perspective on how to defend your faith. And so I really appreciate that about that podcast. And I also watch the Ozanwus. He's another Christian poet turned influencer on YouTube. And I listen to a Redefined TV. It's a young Christian married couple. They often address, you know, Christians dating, basically. Cool. So that's like filling my time. A lot of YouTube watches right now.
Awesome. And we'll drop some of the links to some of those podcasts and shows that you heard. Karlesha, I just want to thank you so much for coming and spending some time with us here and sharing your story. I'm so excited for people to kind of get into more of your work that you're doing. I think it's incredible. So just thank you so much for coming on the call.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And guys, thank you guys for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Instagram at strongwomen_of_God. Until next time, take care.